The restaurant shimmered under soft golden lighting, its elegant crystal chandeliers reflecting off polished mahogany tables and delicate champagne flutes. The room hummed with muted conversations, silverware clinks, and quiet jazz. Darren Pierce adjusted the cufflinks on his dark navy suit as he entered Elysian, the upscale rooftop restaurant that only the ultra-wealthy whispered about in elite circles. He'd reserved a window seat weeks ago, planning the perfect evening to impress the woman who had once ruined his marriage and now proudly wore the title of his girlfriend. Callie, the other woman, was every inch the glamorous affair Darren had once thought his ex-wife lacked: bold, sensual, uninhibited. But tonight, as she glided toward their table in a tight red dress, Darren couldn't help the faint flicker of discomfort in his chest. A discomfort he had learned to ignore. They sat, they ordered, they flirted, everything was going according to script, until Callie gasped, "Wait, isn't that your ex-wife?" Darren turned, casually at first, then froze. Across the restaurant, under the subtle glow of a hanging orchid lamp, sat Emily, the woman he had divorced 2 years ago, accusing her of being dull, too serious, not enough fire. But this version of Emily... She glowed, hair cascading in soft waves, lips painted rose, dressed in an ivory satin gown that hugged her figure tastefully. She looked like a goddess summoned from the ashes of heartbreak. But it wasn't her transformation that left Darren speechless. It was the man seated across from her, the one sliding a small velvet box across the table. A proposal, right here, right now, and by the stunned yet emotional expression on Emily's face, it wasn't staged. 2 years earlier, Emily Pierce had cried alone in the bathtub of their Connecticut home, her tears mixing with the lukewarm water, wondering what she did wrong. Darren had come home late again. His scent, once her comfort, was now replaced with unfamiliar perfume and excuses. She had tried to ignore the signs, the overtime, the sudden gym interest, the business trips that didn't match his calendar. When she finally caught him with Callie, his young assistant, it hadn't been a confrontation. It had been quiet, cold. He looked at her and said, "Emily, let's not pretend anymore. We both know this isn't working. Callie makes me feel alive. You don't..." She had packed her things silently. No screaming, no begging, just a quiet departure and a signature on divorce papers. But what Darren never knew was what happened after. Emily moved to Boston, seeking anonymity. She worked part-time at a small bookstore cafe, pouring coffee during the day and pouring her heart into painting by night. Her art, once a hobby Darren ridiculed, became therapy. One rainy afternoon, while displaying her paintings at a local fair, a man lingered at her stall. "Did you paint this?" he asked, pointing to a soft ocean landscape. She nodded, wiping her hands on her apron. "It's called Quiet Resilience." The man, tall with windswept dark hair and a gentle but powerful presence, simply said, "It's brilliant. I'd like to buy it. And meet the woman behind it." That man was Alexander Lane, venture capitalist, art patron, billionaire, and unexpectedly kind. Their connection wasn't instant flames. It was slow burning, authentic. He listened, not just with his ears, but with his soul. He saw her, not as a divorcee or broken woman, but as someone rare and luminous. And while Emily was hesitant at first, afraid to be used again, she let him in. Meanwhile, Darren's world didn't turn out the way he expected. Callie, once thrilling, became needy and unpredictable. She had expensive tastes, little patience, and a growing list of demands. Their sex life, which once burned with forbidden energy, dimmed under the weight of expectation and guilt. Darren often thought about Emily, how stable she was, how calm she made everything. But pride never let him reach out, until tonight. As he watched Alexander Lane, one of the most powerful men in the Northeast, go down on one knee and ask his ex-wife to marry him, Darren felt something twist in his gut. Regret, not just for losing her, but for throwing away the one woman who truly loved him. For a fantasy. Back at the table, Emily's heart thudded in her chest. She hadn't expected a proposal tonight. Alexander had hinted at it, sure, but after all she'd been through, she wasn't sure she was worthy of a second chance at real love. But looking at him now, eyes full of trust and reverence, she realized something. She was. With a trembling smile, she whispered, "Yes." The restaurant erupted in polite applause, including a stunned clap from the table across the room. Darren had stood up. Callie looked humiliated as he walked over without asking. "Emily," he said, his voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" Emily looked at him for a moment, her face unreadable. Then she said gently but firmly, "Some chapters deserve to stay closed." And with that, she turned back to her fiancé, her future. Darren lay awake in bed that night beside Callie, who had fallen asleep with her back turned and her phone face down on the nightstand. He stared at the ceiling fan spinning above them, his mind a hurricane of memories. He remembered the way Emily used to make herbal tea for him when he was stressed, how she'd sit beside him during his late nights, wordlessly supportive. He remembered the way she used to sketch while humming to herself, and how she once surprised him by selling a painting to a boutique gallery, her smile shy, proud, innocent. He had traded all of that for curves and chaos, for ego and indulgence, for a fantasy that crumbled the moment real life set in. He checked Emily's social media. Private, no updates. He Googled Alexander Lane. The man was everywhere. Philanthropist, tech investor, art lover. There were photos of him and Emily at charity galas, art exhibits, and vineyard tours. She looked radiant, untouchable. Darren suddenly realized something he hadn't admitted in 2 years. He had never really stopped loving her. Callie wasn't as asleep as she seemed. She had seen Darren's face when he spotted Emily. She saw the way he clenched his jaw, how his eyes followed her like a boy watching his favorite toy being taken away. And she knew Darren was slipping away. Their relationship had been built on thrills, on power games, on stealing what wasn't theirs. But now, Callie was no longer a secret. She was just the woman he settled with after betraying the only person who ever loved him. She scrolled through her phone until she landed on a photo, one she had taken of Darren's business plans last month. One that revealed confidential investor data. If he was going to go back to Emily, or even think about it, she wasn't going to walk away empty-handed. Emily and Alexander returned to his lakeside estate in upstate New York the day after the proposal. The place was calm, surrounded by golden trees and water that sparkled like glass. It was everything she had never imagined she'd one day call home. But Emily wasn't immune to the past. "I saw Darren last night," she finally told Alexander, standing with him in the kitchen while pouring coffee. "He was there. At the restaurant." Alexander gave her a knowing glance. "Did he say anything?" "He came over after the proposal. Asked to talk." Alexander raised a brow. "And you?" "I told him some chapters deserve to stay closed." Alexander smiled softly, wrapping an arm around her waist. "That's why I love you." Emily felt peace, not just because she had found love again, but because she no longer had to carry the weight of proving her worth to someone who never deserved her in the first place. Still, in the back of her mind, she knew something. Darren wouldn't let go that easily. Darren tried calling Emily twice. Both times, the number was blocked. He even sent flowers to her gallery under a false name, but they were returned. His life with Callie became more unbearable by the day. Arguments turned toxic. Accusations flew. She called him emotionally unavailable. He called her manipulative. Then, one Monday morning, Darren's inbox exploded. The confidential files from his company had been leaked. Business strategies, investor lists, future deals. Panic flooded the office. Clients pulled out. Shareholders demanded answers. Someone had sabotaged him. It didn't take long for the IT team to trace the metadata to Callie's device. Darren confronted her. "You destroyed me," he growled. Callie only smirked. "You destroyed yourself the day you left Emily. I was just the aftermath." With his career in ruins, reputation tattered, and love life a disaster, Darren stood in the wreckage of his own decisions. Regret was no longer just an emotion, it was his reality. 6 months later, Emily stood in front of a wall at the Haven, her new art gallery in Manhattan. Her latest series, titled Rebirth, was drawing media attention. Critics called it hauntingly raw and beautiful. Alexander was by her side, as always, supportive but never controlling. They weren't rushing the wedding, they were building a life. Quietly, sincerely. That evening, as the gallery buzzed with art lovers, Darren walked in. He looked thinner, older, wearing a modest coat, no Callie, no pride. "Emily," he said quietly, "I'm not here to make a scene. I needed to say something." She nodded, allowing him a moment. "I ruined everything," Darren whispered. "You didn't deserve what I did to you. I was a coward, and I let go of something precious because I didn't know how to hold it. I hope you're happy. Truly." Emily studied him for a long moment. Then, with a gentle smile, she said, "I am, and I truly hope one day you are too. No bitterness, no gloating, just grace." He nodded, eyes moist, then turned and walked out into the night. As Alexander approached and kissed her forehead, Emily knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had lost a marriage, but gained herself, and that, above all, was her real victory.